Hey guys, welcome everyone to Hacks and Hobbies Live. I'm your host, Junaid Ahmed, and today we have an exceptional lineup of entrepreneurs who've turned personal and professional challenges into incredible success stories. Let's dive right in and meet our inspiring guests. So let's bring on, I don't even know. Okay, yeah, there we go. Justin Snyder, he's the founder of superfoods.com. He transformed $100 into a $40 million health food brand, showcasing resilience and entrepreneurial grit. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me on.
Super excited to go deeper into the conversation. Let's bring on our guest number two, Steve Walsh, founder of Bison Equity Group and the author of Make the 10x Leap, specializes in guiding entrepreneurs towards significant business scaling and investment success. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on the show. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And then our next guest here is William Bissett, founder of Portis Wealth Advisors, expertly navigates complex financial strategies to secure sustainable growth and lasting legacies for business owners. William, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, the awesome thing, where we go? The cool part about getting to bring entrepreneurs from different walks of life is the ability to collaborate and create content like this. That's number one, we're looking at the same problem from so many different perspectives and getting to a solution that most people are like, wow, I didn't know that was even possible. So I'm so excited that you're all here on this show. It's a way for me to get interaction with and get to know you a little bit. So, Justin, I'm going to start with you. Take us down the path on what inspired you to, go into the forestsuperfoods.com company, and what was the first thing that you did with that $100?
So it was born out of my own experience, really. I remember I was 18 and I went to the doctor and I had this weird rash on my arm. And I said to him, "What's this rash?" And he said, "I don't know, but you're going to have to put cortisol cream on it for the rest of your life." And that experience for me was really eye-opening because he didn't say, like, are you stressed? What's your diet like? Here's some of the reasons why you might be having this rash. Here's what your body's trying to tell you. There was none of that. It was just like this kind of band-aid solution. And that really stuck with me as this kind of experience where I went, oh, hold on, maybe the doctor doesn't have all the answers that I thought he did. And later that year, I was traveling around India and I discovered these green chips in a market which was spirulina chips. And I was fascinated by this idea of superfoods like spirulina, which are super high in different active compounds and nutrients and vitamins that we don't find in our everyday diet. So, like, spirulina is super high in protein and iron and beta carotenes, which are really good for your eyes, and flavonoids and all these incredible nutrients that our body needs to perform at its best. And from that moment, I became very interested in this idea of being able to improve our health through the foods that we eat. And yeah, I think these days it seems very obvious that what you eat is going to impact how good you feel and how healthy you are. But back then, 20 odd years ago, it was not really, I don't feel like us human beings really understood the connection between what we eat and how
Sure.
healthy we are. And so that kind of started this journey of, like, looking at all these incredible foods from all over the world that can really help to improve different aspects of people's lives. And I turned it into a business about 12 years ago. And the first thing I did with the $100, um, I probably bought a domain name, would probably be the first thing. But I mean, when you start a business and you don't have any money, particularly back then, you just have to do everything yourself, and you have to learn how to do marketing and how to do logistics and how to do employee contracts and how to do email marketing and all these different things. You have to learn of all of this process when you're a one-man shop. And it was just out of necessity that I just had to do it all myself. And so I just kind of
Yeah.
learned every aspect of online business. And even now, I don't do a lot of that kind of stuff because there's a whole team behind me, but I feel like it's still very valuable having that knowledge of how e-commerce works as a whole, rather than just giving things off to agencies and not really understanding what they're doing or why it's working or why it's not working.
Man, that's something for sure to go deeper into. Thank you for sharing, man. It's the personal stories are the ones that help us find a problem that then you come to a realization that it's not just you. The whole industry is kind of broken, and how can you help and find a solution yourself. Steve, I want to take the next question to you. You're the founder of Bison Equity Group. What made you or inspired you to write the book Make the 10x Leap? I'm a huge
I,
fan of uh, the Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, but
yeah.
this is a totally very close to that concept. To talk to us about that.
The thing is, I kind of had to start with, I was I was a financial advisor for a long time. And I had an opportunity to invest in a company, and I've always done that. I always invested in companies, but this was a time where I sold my practice. I was all in. I got all into this company. It was a pet supplement company, and I was the main investor in it. But the one thing I saw is I saw the pathway
Mm.
from 0 to 38 million. But the problem is I had the team that I was with didn't see it.
Yeah.
And that was the struggle I had. Is a lot of times when I'm working with entrepreneurs now, the same thing happens. I see a bigger future than they do. And so then now it's, how do I show them that future? And that was where the book started because of that. A lot of entrepreneurs, they think, they're a small company, they can't do it. All the things that they always tell themselves, that they can't do that, they can't grow it to the next level. And a lot of times, they do this scenario where they give them a big hag. It's their, what is their 10x? What is that for them?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't really see it, they're not going to do it. That's the one thing I feel, is that a lot of times they can put the number out there, but if they don't see it, they're not going to get there. And so that's where I come in and start from the top, from that number, and work backwards. And then what do we need to bring in to get that 10x, or maybe it's even higher than that. But the one thing I always say is a small business doesn't have to be small.
Yeah.
That's the mindset. It comes down to it. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they just, they don't have somebody like me to come in and help them with that. And that's, the learning experiences that I had with the pet supplement company, that was the start. It was kind of the spark, but it
Mm-hmm.
really pushed me to the next level about, okay, what is it that I need to do to get to entrepreneurs that really want to scale, but just don't have I would say
Don't know
probably
how.
the know-how, but
Mm.
over, not just the know-how, but maybe it's something that they're missing in the mindset. And so that's where I come into play.
I love that, Steve. The mindset is the number one thing. When I was growing up, and I discovered Tony Robbins in 2003. He was running around on the stage. I'm watching this TV ad at 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, how do I capture this energy? And he's like, you need to get on personal power, right? You need to build your personal power so that you can pour from that power into the business. So the more personal power you have, the more personal power or business power you're able to generate. So you're absolutely right. You have to be able to have that vision, have that personality, so that you can translate and help others see that vision as well. So I love that you're doing this with the 10x model, or make that 10x leap. William, let's talk to you. You've been expertly navigating complex financial strategies. I mean, that's a mouthful, but talk to me about what inspired you to get started in that space. You did mention earlier that you were running a podcast, and then the company took off. So talk to us a little more about that.
Yeah, so I actually have been in wealth management for 20 plus years. Had a software as a service company. I tried to get off the ground in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote a bunch of different peer-reviewed articles and publications for financial advisors, CPAs, accountants, attorneys, and as a result of that, got picked up and kind of seen as a person of knowledge in the space that I was in. New York Times ran an article on me and a couple other
Nice.
companies like mine. We scaled over 1,000 users, but ultimately I made a boatload of mistakes and the company failed and I shut it down in 2015. I realized what power kind of existed in some of the things I did right and did wrong. And so I joined the local Charlotte Angel Fund. And it was a small fund at that point in time, 25 or 30 people, and really wanted to help grow the community. And so I started a podcast focused on local entrepreneurs and local investors to help people understand what angel investing is, what startups is, because people in the Charlotte market really didn't have a concept and idea. And I thought a podcast would be better than writing a bunch of peer-reviewed articles. So, anyways, so I started running a podcast, and as I did that, I got seen again as kind of an expert in dealing with complex matters on the personal finance side. And so my business just kind of took off from a wealth management perspective and dealing with complex people. And what that really evolved into more and more was dealing with small business owners and their complex problems and helping them understand the benefit and the trickiness of their business being the single greatest engine of wealth that they'll ever have, and understanding how to protect it, nurture it, and ultimately monetize it in a way that makes the most sense for them and their families. So, what started off as a hope and dream of scaling a company on the wealth management side has led me down a completely different path that I wasn't really even close to being able to see and understand what was, gosh knows, at this stage in the ball game 13 years ago, right? So, I mean, that little podcast, it was a hobby, right? I mean, it was a goal to help grow a community of people, and not because of me, because of a boatload of other people that poured their heart and soul into it as well. The Charlotte Angel and startup community is thriving and quite strong. So it was awesome to be a component of that and still a supporter and cheerleader of it on the side.
That's really powerful. I love that you realize the mistake and then you say, hey, how can we reintegrate this and find out what local businesses are actually struggling with and how that could come together. So I love that perspective and the way you attacked it with the help of local businesses and the Charlotte. Was it the Chamber of Commerce in Charlotte?
No, we actually, the chamber is all focused on large companies. And so there's very little support from the chamber and really from your large companies, Duke Energy, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Lowe's. You would think they'd be much more interested in seeing this, the startup ecosystem here develop and evolve and be a component to what those businesses can tap into from a growth perspective. And those businesses really have so far mainly missed the boat, so to speak. So it's been driven by a boatload of people with passion on a much smaller scale than what you would have thought with the chamber, or the big Fortune 500 companies here. Now, I mean, they're coming around, right? But they lead from behind, like unfortunately so many people in this world do.
Yes, that's so true. I have a question for Justin, and I'm wondering what's one question you'd love Steve to address regarding strategic investments and scaling sustainably?
I would really love to hear Steve's opinion on business plans. It's something that I've never done, and I've always just kind of taken the mentality of putting one foot in front of the other and just going, well, what's the next little baby step I need to take, and kind of going along that way and growing that way, kind of one little step at a time. And so I don't have a lot of skills in terms of strategy, and it'd be really interesting to hear from someone who's an expert in strategies to like whether he thinks there's value in business plans, and what's really the most important way, if not business plans, then how do you go about strategizing about where it is you're going to be, in 10 years from now?
Yeah, I always look at a business plan just because it kind of gives me a roadmap of what the entrepreneur wants to do. That's kind of what I look at is when you look at a business plan, it's not always going to be it never looks like that, but at least it gives me an idea of what their plan is down the road. And so that I can get on board with them and figure out what is it they need to get to the next level. And so that's why I like a business plan. But a business plan doesn't have to be complicated. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs are so afraid that they need to put everything on a business plan, and that's really, a business plan is just kind of an outline. And so an outline gets me to where I need to understand, okay, this is where you want to go, and then how do we get there? And then I can work with that. The one thing I always say is it's always the people first, and then it's a matter of like the business plan or even the product itself. Because if I don't believe that the person can do it or feel like they can get to the next level, it's a moot point. And so the business plan is great to have, but it's probably the second thing I look at. I look at the people first, and then it's the second thing. Because I tell you what, I've met some entrepreneurs that had no business plan, but they just had fire. And I knew one thing is they're going to get it done no matter what. And that was the one thing I would say that probably separates a lot of entrepreneurs, is that they have that passion, that gut feeling. And so they bring that. When they bring that, it's a matter, okay, let's get that business plan in place if we're going to raise money. Because when investors come in, they love to see that plan. And that's really where that plan really comes into play is, let's put that together. We're going to raise some capital. Let's get to the next level. That is a really good outline. And like I said, it doesn't have to be complicated, because I think a lot of times when you make it too complicated, it confuses the investors. And the investors, when you confuse them, what do? Nothing. And so that's where I look at is, but it is important, but it's not the number one thing I look at first. So I always look at the people first.
I love that. And Steve, what question would you have for specific financial strategy question would you pose to William regarding building sustainable legacies?
William, so you're in the financial advising area, and a lot of times, what are the systems that you try to put in place for the advisor? Do you feel that the advisors don't really have any sort of direction, and you try to put something together for them so they do have a direction, or what they're going to be going for?
Yeah, so we're building out. So we've hired an advisor over the course of the last couple of years and have trained him. We're bringing another advisor on board over the course of the last 12 months, and we'll make another hire towards the end of this year. In our space, what the profession teaches really well is personal finance, and I think understanding how people need to get from where they are now to where they may end up wanting to be over the course of the next 5 or 10 years. And the reality is most people don't really have a clear idea of where they're going to be in 5 or 10 years. It's much like with the business plan, the act of planning is the benefit, right? Once you set something in place, it's much easier to pivot and adjust than when you don't have something in place in the first time. So I think the industry does a really good job at that. What we've been focusing in on with the advisors that we're bringing on board is just the complexity of the business owner. And business owners, they have a wonderful asset that they, for a while, for the first 5, 10, 15 years of the asset's life, it was mainly hold on, try to build something that created income for them and their family and their growing staff. And then on the back end of it, it's all of a sudden it's this complex monster that is a wonderful, wonderful asset. But most advisors don't understand all the nuances, right? They don't understand how important the operating agreement and the contracts are. They don't understand that most of these folks have band-aid together most of the operation, right? I mean, they're, gosh knows, you think about their insurance contracts that they have. Most of the time, they're um, horribly managed. They're just, I need an insurance contract. I'm going to put one on top of the other. And so there's so many issues that the small business owner has inside of their business that's not optimized. And so what's going to happen is most of them are going to head off and they're going to end up selling their asset to somebody within the industry or some roll up or something else. And at the end of the day, they're going to give that acquire the opportunity to realize that value. And so what we want to do is partner with folks like you and their CFO and their attorney and their insurance agents and really make sure that everybody's on board to helping that client, that business owner, that family really hone in on them realizing that value rather than giving all of that value creation to the acquirer. And then how does that circle back around to their personal finance stuff? So their estate planning documents, their personal tax planning, and all of those different things. So we've really got to train people to be comfortable being stupid. And I say that kind of loosely, right? But I mean, we have to be the dumbest person in the room so that we can ask those clarity causing questions that causes everybody else to stop and say, hey, wait a second. This is what we've done in the past, but in this particular instance, maybe there's something else, or we've done it this way, but the entrepreneur doesn't have any idea what we're talking about because they built a business that has nothing to do with this. Mm-hmm. And if we just talk in our typical lingo, then those people get passed over in the conversation, and therefore there's a lack of trust. And so it's really teaching the advisors that we're bringing on board more about business, how these businesses have been built, and they are phenomenal businesses, right? But fine tuning it for the acquirer is important, and we've got to help our advisors understand that knowledge, and then getting them comfortable, having enough confidence in themselves and in the process to be the dumbest person in the room.
I love that. The notion of being the dumbest person, so because you're there to gain insights, gain knowledge, and understand, hey, where is everybody at, and how can you, with your expertise, even if it's sitting in the background, how can you actively listen and understand the thing that they're going through. It's I think it's a very important thing that we can do as entrepreneurs, even if we're in a room of our customers.
I mean, think about our kids, right? Like the great thing about kids when they're little is they don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so they don't know anything. So what do? They ask a boatload of questions, and then they learn. Right. So if we can just sit in that room and be the kid, again, be the dumbest person in the room and ask questions so that everybody else can learn what others in that room have and are capable of sharing, then it makes the room that much more smart. Right. I mean, and everybody gets on the same page at a much quicker pace because there's trust, because people talk about why they want to do something or how it's going to happen. And so so again, being the dumbest person in the room, ask questions, bring clarity, trust, and cohesiveness to the team. And now everybody's marching forward at a faster pace.
I love it. Man, this has been a really powerful conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. I've got a lightning round of questions. Justin, I'm going to take this to you. Give us the best advice for bootstrapping entrepreneurs.
I think the best advice is to not get distracted by the customer emails and even the accounting and the logistics of stuff, and to realize the most important part of your business is getting sales. If you don't have sales, you don't have a business. Whereas if you have sales, you can make everything else work. And so as a business owner, you need to train yourself to love marketing and to be curious about marketing, and to every day take a step that's going to help to grow your business and to really prioritize the marketing. so many business owners tell me they hate marketing and they want to give that to agencies and other people. And I think that's super dangerous, because I think the most important part of running a business is getting sales. And so as a business owner, particularly someone who's just starting out, but even, we're gonna do 8 figures this year, and I'm still very much involved in the marketing and the sales side of things, because that's the most integral part of the business. If you have that, you can make everything else work. If you don't have that, there's no business. And so I think the most important thing as a business owner is to really train your brain to go like, what's the one thing I can do today to build more sales?
That is powerful. Sales is the lifeblood of all businesses. Without sales, you literally have no business, right? You have no business if you have no sales.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Justin. Appreciate it. Steve, next one is up for you. Most effective mindset shift for exponential growth.
You know, um, I would think, if you look at the mindset growth, the shift, a lot of times entrepreneurs, they start small, and a lot of times they're so in the business, they need to step out of the business and look at it a different way. And a lot of times what happens is you get stuck in the day-to-day operations, all that you're doing, everything, until you step out. And I've had a lot of entrepreneurs that have done that, and it's helped their business grow exponentially. It goes back to, what are you going to be? Are you going to be a business owner, or are you going to be? I go back to, one of my friends was a sushi chef,
Mm-hmm.
and he was doing everything in 24. He was in the business all the time. So he had to do is change his mindset. He went from a one shop to 8 within 18 months. And all it was a shift. He became a business owner, meaning that he replaced himself some of the places where he needed to replace himself. And that was one of the biggest shifts he had, was that it was the mindset of, how big am I going to get? What do I want to do? Who do I need to find? And those are the things. A lot of times entrepreneurs, they are afraid to hire people. I say that was one of the things you need to really look at is, if you're wanting to grow, get that first person and then the second, because every time you get another person in, and if it's efficiently, if they're doing what they need to be doing, it gets to the next level. You get to the next level, but it's that shift. It's the mindset shift of, you're a business owner. And so that's where I'd say, look at that. I'm going off of what Justin just said.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing, the lifeblood of the company is, if you look at sales and marketing, probably the most important things. I look at is, if you are doing the things where you're looking at a company and you're looking at is marketing, and you're also looking at innovation, those two things, everything else is a cost. If those are the two things you're really working on, those, everything else will fall in place. But those are the two that really push the next level.
I love that, Steve. Thank you so much. Appreciate that powerful answer. The power of a team is so much exponential, and with sales, you can then bring in teams, and you can step out of the way of scaling that business, and of course continue marketing what you're building. For William, talk to us about what is the essential first step in financial planning for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's funny, right? It's the same thing for everybody. It's so basic. It's cash flow, right?
Mm,
And I say that because cash flow is so fundamental um, to them as an individual, and then to them as the business, right? Understanding where our cash is going on a family basis, and then understanding how the business is doing to fund that cash flow. So um, most folks end up wanting to maintain or continue some aspect of their lifestyle as they go into retirement. And so that ends up kind of solving a lot of problems if we understand what their cash flow and expenses are, right? So it helps us understand what their future goals could end up being. It helps us understand insurance strategies that might need to be in place. It helps us understand how much cash reserves the individual should have. And then it goes
Yeah.
over and it helps us start to understand all of the same things on the business perspective, right? Most businesses are going to be priced out on some aspect. Most small businesses are going to be priced out on some aspect of multiple and multiple of earnings. And so, what's the cash flow of the business, right? So, it is cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. I always say cash is king. If you don't have liquidity and you need liquidity, then the game is up. And so you've got to understand what needs to be liquid and then how much liquidity is being generated on a month basis.
Man, this is such a powerful realization. Cash flow, right? Cash flow, sales, marketing, scalability. I think they all go hand in hand because without cash flow and without sales and without marketing scale, I think it's going to be very hard to move the next needle or the needle in your business. You know, cash flow is absolutely something that we don't think about because some some sales cycles might take 2 months or 3 months to acquire because it's a bigger product as opposed to having different levels of products in your business is also going to help you figure out, hey, how often is the cash coming in as opposed to the cash going out? Because marketing requires cash going out, sales requires some type of time, effort put in to bring in those sales. But then again, in your sales cycle or sales model, how many different ways can your customers come in and buy into you as well? So I think they're all different ways to think about when you're launching your business, when you're launching your entrepreneurship, and figure out, hey, what's missing, where do you need to first focus on. And what's really fun is Alex Hermosi just announced this new book coming out probably sometime in August. It's called The Money Models. I'm not sure what it's going to be about, but I'm pretty sure that these money models is going to have some level of cash flow, some level of scalability, some level of sales and marketing integrated. But guys, thank you so much for the time here on the podcast. What's cool is that we get to have these, short little conversations here. But then what's also amazing is that your stories truly highlight the strength and determination it takes to build lasting success. Guys, please feel free to follow our inspiring guests online and stay tuned for a more deep dives on upcoming podcast episodes we're going to be having with Justin, Steve, and William here in a future session. Until next time, stay inspired and keep building your business. Thanks so much. That's it for today's show, and we'll catch you in the next one.
All right.